I think, yes, he's definitely the man I want to get behind. I think that he made a mistake. I think he's apologized for that. And I think, yes, I think he will be a role model.
That voice may sound familiar to you. That is Juanita Broaddrick when she announced her support last year for Donald Trump just before she came to St. Louis for the debate here at Washington University. In fact, Juanita's with us again in the studio right now. Juanita, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Welcome back to St. Louis.
Thank you.
You were telling me when they brought you in before it was all hush-hush and top secret, right?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. It was completely, I mean, we were hidden the entire day.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he held that news conference and the media rushed over there and they walked in and he's sitting at a table with, what, 3 or 4 of the ladies, right?
Yeah, 3 of his victims and then the one lady that had been raped when she was 12. You know, that Hillary,
right. Yeah.
Hillary,
defended, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Yeah.
But, well, welcome back to St. Louis. I know that, you're Arkansas native?
Yes.
They're playing basketball tonight, over here at Scottrade.
Oh, no, I had no idea.
I know. How about
yeah.
that? So anyway, you're going to be speaking downtown, so you won't be able to attend that. I'm sorry, but they are playing tonight from the SEC tournament right here in town.
I'll be darned. I'm sure my family will be watching.
I'm sure they will. So we're thrilled to have Juanita in here. Juanita is in town. She's going to be talking tonight. The Jefferson County Young Republicans, correct?
Yes.
Sponsoring your stay here in St. Louis and your speech tonight. People, we'll get to more. I'll repeat this later, but Juanita's going to be appearing down at the Drury Hotel there across from the Arch on 4th Street at 7 o'clock. You can go to 971talk.com/events where you can register online and get a free ticket to that event. Annie Fry is going to be down there moderating tonight, and I'm planning to come down there, and a few of the other folks from 97.1 will be there as well. Your book, You Better Put Some Ice on That, is the title of it. You and I have had you on the radio before here by phone. We talked a little bit about your experience with Bill Clinton all those years ago. And now we're in the middle of the hashtag Me Too movement. But nobody seems to include you in that for some reason.
Oh, no, I was never included in the Me Too. Listen, Mark, I was Me Too long before it was cool to be Me Too. But this originated, with Alyssa Milano when she was trying to get people to come forward about sexual abuse. None of the Me Too'ers ever contacted me. In fact, when Time Magazine was doing the article on them, no one knew that they were going to be Person of the Year, but they contacted me about submitting a comment in support of Me Too. And so I did that. I was happy to do that. And then all of a sudden, when Me Too won Person of the Year, I went to the article and I thought, man, this is nice. I want to see, where my comments are. They weren't there.
Of course not.
No. And so when I contacted Charlotte Alter, the daughter of Jonathan Alter, who had taken my statement, and I said, my comments weren't there in support of the Me Too people. And she said, well, there were just so many comments, it was hard to choose.
Hard to fit them all in,
yes.
wasn't it? Yeah. We just had to pick and choose is what she meant to say.
Right.
The attack you describe in here took place in the late 80s, is that correct?
78.
78. So before, okay.
The morning of April the 25th, 1978.
And Bill Clinton held what office at the time?
He was the Attorney General of Arkansas.
Before he became governor.
Running for governor. I was working in his campaign in Crawford County, where I was from, am still from. I was go around in the evening, put up yard signs, and hand out campaign information. And I did that for about 30 days before he came to my nursing home. He was making a round in our area, and the state headquarters said, could he come by your nursing home and meet some of the families? And I said, sure. We're excited. That would be great. So that's when I met him, about 30 days after I'd started volunteering.
And then later there was an event at a hotel, correct?
Yes. In fact, when he was there, we had an opportunity. The newspaper wanted photos of us. That's the photo you see on the front of my book.
Of your book, yeah.
And after we took the photos, he came over to me and started talking to me about my nursing home. So I took that opportunity to say, hey, you know, we're having problems, and our reimbursement is so low, and we really need to have your help if you become governor. And he said, you know, are you ever in Little Rock? And I said, yeah, I'll be there in about 3 weeks. And he said, I'd love to talk to you about that sometime. So that's how I got to Little Rock. And that's how, now, the way he ended up in my room was, we called his campaign. I took my nurse down with me for a nursing home seminar about 3 weeks after he came to my nursing home. And so we called his campaign headquarters when we got up the next morning to try to run over at noontime and speak with him. I had brought a bunch of information with me, a whole big file. And so we called, and the young lady answered, and she said, I told her who I was, and Mr. Clinton had told me to call when I was there. And she said, oh, yes, Mrs. Hickey. She said, Mr. Clinton said, if you ever called, to please call this number, which I called. And he answered. I told him the very same thing. We were there. Could we come over at noon and talk with him? And he said, you know, I'm not going to be there. He said, why don't I just come to your hotel now? And we can meet down in the Camelot coffee shop. That's where I was staying. And I thought, oh, that's great. So I turned to Norma and I say, you go on to the meeting, and as soon as I'm through in the coffee shop, I'll be right on to the meeting. Well, in a little while, the phone rang, and he said, I'm here, but it's so crowded, and there's reporters down here. He said, can we just have coffee and talk about this in your room? And I can't remember specifically how I felt. I'd never been alone in a room with a man, anyone other than my husband. But I told him he was Attorney General, you know, and I had things I wanted to show him and talk to him about. So I said, yeah, I'll order coffee to the room. And so he comes up to the room, and this should have been a dead tip-off. When I opened the door, there stands Bill Clinton in sunglasses. You know, I mean, that's a dimly lit hallway.
Yeah.
And there he stands. But, you know, stupid me, I let him on into the room. And it just goes from bad to worse. You know, I really don't like to go into
I understand
the details of it, but it was actually rape. It was horrific rape. It was something that I'll never forget.
You know, I think back on that time because I was a television reporter in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember at the time of him running for office, all of the claims, whether it was you or Paula Jones or anybody else, that it was all dismissed. The trailer trash comments, and the other day I heard Dee Myers, who was one of his spokespersons back then, say, well, in hindsight, we probably mishandled that. Really? I mean... Oh, yeah. My son, who's an attorney, did an interview with Larry King about, maybe 30 days after I went on NBC Dateline. Right.
And Dee Myers and Gherkin, I can't remember his first name.
David Gherkin.
David Gherkin, and one other. After Larry interviewed my son, and he told him everything that he knew from the time he was a teenager, Dee Myers was speechless. She couldn't even answer Larry King's questions, and so was David Gherkin.
They held that interview, didn't they? That they did with you. NBC didn't air that. They refused to air it.
They didn't air it until after the impeachment was over. You know, it's just like I tweeted the other day. You just wonder if NBC had not held my Dateline interview, what would have been the outcome?
The outcome, yeah, because people, they just weren't given that information.
Yeah.
We probably got about 2.5, 3 minutes left here. In that amount of time, I remember during the election when you and I talked about this specifically about Hillary Clinton and how she treated you after this happened.
Right.
Did you tell me you felt threatened?
Oh, yes. She very definitely threatened me. I went to a fundraiser, which I didn't go to the fundraiser. I was still in a state of shock. This fundraiser was about 3 weeks afterwards, after the rape. And I went up there. I had set up the fundraiser when I was volunteering with very good friends of mine. I went up to take the information to her, tell her I wouldn't be there, but I didn't get out in time. And before I could leave there, Hillary Clinton made her way over to me. And, you know, the first thing I thought when she started toward me was, oh, my God, here comes this poor woman. What am I going to say to her? Well, she came over to me smiling so nicely and said, I want to tell you how appreciative that Bill and I are for everything you're doing in this campaign. And I just sort of nodded and was going to turn and walk away. Then I feel somebody grab my arm from behind, and I thought it was somebody going to tell me goodbye. And I turn around, and it's Hillary, and she has a hold of me. And she pulls me to her, and she no longer is smiling. She has a terrible frown, and she says, do you understand everything you do? I almost fainted.
I'll bet you did.
Yeah.
I'll bet you did. Juanita Broaddrick, it's great to meet you in person. I'm looking forward to the event tonight. Like I said, 971talk.com/events. You can go in there and register. There are still tickets available. If you're unable to do that, I'm told you can probably show up tonight at the Drury, 7 o'clock downtown across from the Arch. Get a chance to listen to Juanita and maybe ask some questions, and Annie Fry will be there, and it'll be a good time. Juanita, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to meet you in person after all this time. Certainly is. All right.